There is a man here in this hall who was a bit poorly, it has to be said. Well, quite a lot poorly, really. Most people, when they're poorly, decide that they'll just recover gently and have a bit of a rest, not do anything too taxing. This man decided he'd sail around Britain. I think we'd like to hear his story, wouldn't we? So let's welcome onto the stage RYA. Now, I have to say that Ollie has told me very secretly, and I'm to tell nobody, that he's a little bit nervous of you. Now, I've told him that the people at the RYA Volvo Dinghy show are lovely. They're really kind, they're really lovely. They'll burst into huge applause when you come into the stage, and they've already done that.
Yeah.
And they're very kind. So, Ollie, don't be nervous. Go on, you go for it.
I'm not nervous. This is my first time, guys, so I'm a little bit... We'll try and get it right first time. But wow, Christ, that's happened quick. My name's Ollie Rofix. I'm 27 now. Sorry, 26, 27 next week. I live on a little farm near Ipswich. I'm a kind of steak and chips kind of guy, and I love being on the water. I've done it ever since I was a kid. I mean, look at this little fella here, dressed up in my little sailor's outfit.
The story of Ollie Rofix. He's from Suffolk, and he's a remarkable young man. Ollie was diagnosed with leukemia in 2005.
He had a bone marrow transplant the following year, and if all that wasn't enough, he's just completed a solo voyage around Britain.
You mustn't let the side effects of the treatment and other bad things around the illness get to you. You might not have long to live, but live it to the best you can. If someone says it's impossible, just go for it. Prove them wrong. Thursday the 26th of May, the 2nd of June, and the 14th of June, 9th of July. It's the 22nd of August, it's the 13th of October. Seas off of right, just to try and show you how various currents and things like that work here. I'm bloody freezing, really cold, but I can't warm up. Survivor. The second one would be certainly optimistic, because I'm a survivor. Lucky. Inspired. Fighter. Damn right. That was it. I wouldn't have get here. Bloody hell, it's written all over the bloody boat. Fighting, yeah. Helped me inspire others to fight cancer. So yeah, fighter. Yeah, so basically, 6 years ago, I was diagnosed with quite a rare form of leukemia. Initially, it went from ALL, was my first original diagnosis, then it migrated into this weird form of AML. And then we went into this really rare form, which I was the third known in the world to have this type. But sadly, the other two people, they'd died. So the doctors really didn't quite know what to do. And at this point, I can remember thinking to myself, you know, if they don't know, what am I supposed to do? So ultimately, yeah, it's because of what happened, and because I survived all of that, I thought I'd been given that second chance. I was really lucky. You know, I'm the only person in the world now, so a survivor of this type of leukemia. And I wanted, because I had that second chance, I wanted to give something back. And it was this little boat that really, this project that got me through my illness. And so that's what I really wanted to try and go off and do, and to tell the story to everyone and try and inspire them to fight the cancer, to fight that disease, because if you fight and you get that inspiration, that goal, you can beat it. You can definitely 100% beat it. It was because of the treatment was quite an intense treatment for me. I needed a bone marrow transplant. And I thought, well, yeah, this is going to be fairly straightforward kind of stuff. But then there are no donors out there, which is quite worrying. So the NHS done the national search, and then they went to a worldwide search, and there were none. And then we went to the Anthony Nolan Trust that found 2 possible matches, one in America and one here in the UK. And so what we done, we went for the guy in the UK, because it was a slightly better tissue match, so the chances of a cure were just that much better. So last year, the challenge was for, or the charity side of it was for the Anthony Nolan Trust. I wanted to raise as much money as I could for them, and also get as many new potential donors onto the register. And today it's just over 1,000 people that I've got, or known people on the register, when I last done a tot-up a couple of days ago, and raised just over £20,000 for them over the past 5 years. It's been quite hard work because it's just me. I haven't got a team of people behind me and helping me do all of this stuff. It's just me and the little boat. Well, this is the little boat. This is what I went in for just before my transplant, when I realised that potentially the outlook wasn't all this good, and the chances were quite slim. I wanted this goal, this inspiration. I really wanted this little boat. I thought, if I pull through all of this, I'm going to want to spend the summer sailing around on the River Orwell back at home. And so that, regrettably, really is what I chose, because as soon as I got it home, thinking it was going to be this marvellous little boat, it was actually a big load of rubbish, and it was rotten, it was full of osmosis, and a complete wreck. Well, I bought the little boat just before I had my transplant back in 2006, and it was my project to get better, my project to keep focused on all the treatment, because I knew it was going to be a hard one, because the ultimate outlook really wasn't all that rosy for me. So the project behind this boat was to keep me focused, and really in the long run, at the time I didn't think about it, but over time and through the treatment I realised it wasn't just a focus for me, it was a focus for the family, because my father and a friend of mine, when I had to go in for my transplant, then carried on rebuilding the hull through that. So it was good for them because it kept them focused on it, and they were videoing what they had done every day, driving up to me at hospital at night time. I'd then watch it through the night whilst they were then working on it the next day.
So 10:30. We've put a load of filler in here, there and everywhere. You can see all these little red dots. It's filler. We've cleaned it, we've put all two layers of brown paper on to protect it.
So when I got out of hospital, I unwrapped it as if it was almost a present, really. But I unwrapped this boat, and it was just a bare hull, a blue and white bare hull. But I didn't realise at the time I was going to be that ill after my treatment. I thought I would just, as soon as the treatment's over, I thought I'd just be back into life, go back to work, go and do whatever I needed to do. I didn't realise it was going to take me 18 months to go for a certain virus that the donor gave me called CMV, and all the treatment that goes with it was quite hard. So ultimately I put it in the shed and forgot about it, and just left it, because I was too ill, I was too tired to ever do anything. I suppose it was a couple of years onwards from that, back in the summer of 2009, when a couple of friends of mine then relapsed and were terminal. So I thought, what actually am I doing? Is I'm at work, plodding along as normal. For me it was harder seeing what those two were going through than it was actually my time in hospital. So I just left work and was going to take this little boat around the country. And it really was, literally, I went to work one morning and that was it. I packed everything in and I was going to take this little boat around the country. First thing first was, this is going back to when I was, just before I went in for my transplant, we had to take the gel coat off because it had osmosis. And I couldn't get involved in that because of all the dust and things like that. So we got this guy to do it for us. If you, on to the next one. It was quite a bit of a team effort really at the initial stages of it. Because no one really knew what we were doing. It was quite good fun, and we was like, where do you start, where do you finish? So we just went whole hog to get this thing going. here I am the night before I went in for my transplant. The same night I went in for my transplant here. That's how I left the boat. And my old man, well, my dad and a friend of mine carried on rebuilding it through my treatment and put the gel coat back on. This is Ben there with his can of Coke, and that's Dad there having a chat. But at this point, I was in hospital having that transplant. That is it. When I came out of hospital, that was the first lift off the trestles onto the trailer. So that's what Dad and Ben done for me when I was ill. And it helped the family, as I said back in the video, because it kept them focused on a project, and it kept me focused on it too. And so I was really excited to see this, and this was what, this is what I fought for, to see that. So when I left work, I started to finish off fitting it out. So I had to build another rudder, for example, and really start working on the refit of the boat. I was going to have a little outboard on the back, but because of what I'd been through, my old man says, you are not going anywhere off the coast of this country without a proper engine in it. So I had to put all that in there. But looking back at it now, I'm kind of glad I did, because it got me out of 1 or 2 muddles. This is the first launch of it, and because I wasn't too sure what I was doing, I had all this gear sitting at home that was going to go in this boat, and I wasn't sure how to balance it. So I chucked it in the water and got people to stand all over the boat to represent the weights and the bits that were going to go on this boat, and that's why I put the waterline on it, and got it wrong. But this is it in the shed here. This was a couple of years ago, just fitting it all out inside, trying to figure out where to put things. I put the hob, because this thing was so small, you've got the hob opposite the toilet, which, as I learned, wasn't really the best move as I was going around the country. If we go shoot on to the next one. This is where I lived down this side, and the spare berth was obviously on the starboard side there. But it really was a total mess, this boat was. It really was horrible. And I was trying to build this thing around myself and not from a manual. So I just put everything where I wanted it to go, so I didn't bump my head on it, or I could move around the place nice and easily. So if we go on to the next one. This is just more, just bits and bobs of inside the boat. And it literally was a case of getting the marker pen out, scribbling all over it. That's where I'll put the hob, that's where I'll put the toilet, there's that type of thing. The decking, a little bit over the top, but it really makes it stand out quite nicely when it's in a marina. It makes it look like a mini, well, you could almost call it a mini oyster in some respects. It really made it look quite good, and it made people stop and look, and it got that interest. So off to the next one. This is me putting the anti-fouling on in the shed just before I took it down to the south coast for a trial year back in 2010. I spent 3 months living on it down there, just to get used to it, see how it handled, because I'd never sailed it before. It was just a complete stab in the dark as to how it was going to sail, what it was going to be like. And so that's pretty much how I left it and took it down to the south coast, where I stayed at Haslam Marina for about 3 months. But to the next one. This is how I lived on it for 3 months. The reason why all this rubbish is on the floor here is because I just put another little bit of decking in downstairs. But it really was a work in progress when I was down there. And this horrible mattress thing that I was sleeping on was a horrible thing. So CJ Marine then came along and made me a couple of nice cushions for it. But it really was quite an uncomfortable experience, and it was then back in 2010 when I thought, geez, what on earth am I doing living on this tiny little boat? I was at the London Boat Show just before I set off. Back there is Dave there as well. Again, another totally random thing, because I'd never set up a stage before at a boat show, so it was just a case of just sticking bits all over the wall and chuck the boat in, build up a little staircase. It was just all randomly worked, all off a shoestring, but it worked really well, and it was quite a successful show for me. It got the word out really well. And Newton Faulkner came along because of the connection with Hannah. He came along and played his guitar on the boat, which was very funny, really good fun. But he's been a huge support of the whole project right from the word go, and loves to come down and get on there and play his guitar. Got on to the next one. Well, yeah, there he is, the man himself. And nice to see he took his shoes off. He treats everything with respect, that guy does. Brilliant guy. Anyway, to the next one. after the boat show, my folks decided they were going to go off on holiday, and it kind of left me in a bit of a muddle because I couldn't get the boat out of the water, into the water. I didn't have a trailer license, I didn't have a crane, nothing. So everyone had packed off and left me, just sitting in the middle of Excel. And this is when the problem began. How was I going to get it into the Thames? You know, just a bit of a tricky one. So I ring up the London Met Police, and they send their marine unit over with the Land Rover and the trailer, if you go on to the next clip. And they came along and picked it up for us, and they took it down to Wapping, and we launched the little boat at Wapping. And because I was there, I sailed it around St Catherine's, and that's where I stayed for 3 months before I set off around the country. That's me just spending my first night outside Wapping, outside the police station. It was really, really, yeah, just a funny weekend really that was, hanging around with the police and mooring up there. But anyway, I got into St Catherine's, and I remember this guy came down with a little old person's trolley and a cap on, and jumped on the boat, said, "Hi, yeah, my name's David, blah blah blah," and so on and so forth. Didn't have a clue it was Praro. Didn't have the foggiest, and he jumped on there, we were chatting away, and really, really nice guy. So that was just a totally random, another random experience really for us. And now this is about the little video of the trip. For me, leaving London was definitely putting the past behind me and moving on into the future, and really into the unknown future as well. Because although I'd done lots of sailing, I'd never gone out the Thames and turned left. I'd never gone north before. Here I am inside the first seal off of the Caledonian Canal. You can see there's a huge great hailstorm. So I've just left Port William. Port William over there. I'm actually really, really tired this morning. I didn't sleep very well again last night for some reason. Well, there it is. There's Land's End. I'm just nipping across Poole Bay at the moment, and there is the Isle of Wight. Okay, so I'm just out here on the Solent, right near No Man's Land, port there. Yeah, just behind me is the Isle of Sheppey here. Well, the best part of the whole trip for me is the dolphins going across the Bristol Channel. We've got dolphins swimming around under the boat. For me, that was the very best bit. So I know it's a bit of an odd thing to say when you've got the scenery of Scotland and the hills and the rolling mountains, all that. It's very nice, don't get me wrong. But in my eyes, you know, the hills of Scotland will still be there next year, but the dolphins certainly won't be. So that was a real eye-opener for me. And the whole country has been fantastic. I literally turn up into a marina, and local people come down. Other sailors come on down, and they're just interested in the boat because it does look very different. You know, so I end up going out with them for dinner. They come back and have dinner on their boat. But yeah, it's the whole country. It's been fantastic. You can't fault them. I turn up into a marina, I don't get charged. That's very unusual for that to happen throughout the whole country. But I think I've got the inspiration and the drive to go from one port to the next from the locals, from the country really, from all the people I meet at these various places. Now heading towards London. When I got back home to St Catherine's Dock, that was going to be it. I was going to pack up. I'd achieved my goal, I'd achieved my target, and I wanted to crack on with life. I now want to try and involve others. I want to give the experience that I've just had. I want to put that across to others and let others be a part of what I've just done. Okay, yeah, so this is me leaving London on the 28th of March last year. I was petrified, is the honest truth, because I was coming out the Thames, I was going to turn left, and I'd never done this before. And I thought the boat was just a little bit too small after my previous training down the Solent. So it really was quite an interesting time for me, but on to the next one. You can kind of get a scale there of quite how small the little boat was. But yeah, it was all good fun. It kind of worked. The first day going down the Thames was okay. I kind of got a bit wet after this, but pretty much that was the whole trip really. Just ended up getting soaked the whole time. On here I turned up into Amble, and the Spalls came out to say hello, which was really strange because I'd only remembered Timothy Spall from Vida Saints Pet really. I didn't quite know who he was, but no, had a good time with beers and baked beans and sausages really on their barge that they went around the country. And This is just down on the Solent, just some photos of the little boat. Onto the next one, please. There. This is up in Scotland, up in Peterhead, with Jimmy Button's trawlerman fishing boat there. There was no way was Jimmy going to get on the boat and sail around the corner with me to Whitehall. Sorry. He said the boat was too small and too dangerous, and he wouldn't even go across the bay, the Peterhead Bay in it, which I think was quite poor. But there again, his boat's a little bit bigger. Pete Townsend, again, totally random. He jumped on the boat in Falmouth, didn't have a clue who he was, chatting away to him like I would anyone else. And then as soon as the penny dropped, was when he walked back onto his boat, which was right behind me, the huge, great big super yacht. That was quite funny, good times. When I turned up into Foy, I got this random phone call from someone called Dawn, and again she said, "Oh, it's Dawn here," and didn't have a clue who she was. But yeah, I went back up to her house. It was really strange because it was steak and chips on the plate. It was fantastic, really, really random, and funny as well because I really didn't know who she was, as stupid as I am. This is just a picture here of my donor and I. I mean, that is the guy that ultimately, if he wasn't alive, I wouldn't be here now. If he was, I owe a lot to that guy. On to the next one. This is coming in. This is down at Portsmouth. Just trying to get a scale there of the size of the boat compared to other boats. I did feel quite small most of the time. This is just coming into Inverness, I think it was up there, and you can kind of get a good feel there of how wet I always was. Again, this is Bertie, the harbour master. Thought I was a complete plonker, but he loved it. Thought it was fantastic, and it wasn't always hard sailing. This is me at Wells. I kind of got a bit carried away with sandcastles and the bucket and spade there. This is over in Hull. This is the first thing to go wrong with the little boat was the gearbox. So I was coming down up the Humber, sorry, and the gearbox went just as I was trying to get into the marina on a spring tide. So that was quite an interesting time. Very nearly crashed the boat. God knows where that was, but it was just a nice day. This is the Holyhead Coast Guard. I tried to pull off and stop and meet as many people as I could whenever I could, because the Coast Guard for me really important. I was always on the radio to those guys. I must admit, the further north I got, the harder I found it was to understand them with their accents. We got around all that. This is at Troon. I was warned by my doctors not to push it, not to get overly tired and too tired, and I thought I knew best. And ultimately, it came back and bit me at Troon. And so I spent nearly 3 weeks there trying to recover from quite a lot of nonsense, really, we'll call it. But this is the lifeboat there, and just had a good chat with the guys. This is coming across to the Isle of Man. Lovely weather, really nice day. But going from the Isle of Man down to Holyhead was the worst leg, and I don't ever want to experience that again, because all of a sudden I found myself in this position where I shouldn't have been, in quite some nasty weather, and it wasn't pleasant. But yeah, this is my homecoming in St Catherine's on the 28th of October. So it was exactly 7 months to the day from London to London. And what an interesting 7 months it was. But on to the next one. These are the companies that made all of that possible. And I forgot to put Andark on there, which is a little bit embarrassing since they're next to me. But yeah, so I owe it all to these guys. Really massive, huge thanks goes out to them. Because when I went to these guys, I was just a guy who'd just been ill, rebuilding a little boat in his garden shed in Suffolk. I didn't really have the world's bestest pitch, but they kind of took to it, and if it wasn't for them, I couldn't have done it, because I couldn't have afforded to do it. On to the next one. Because of the success, really, of what has happened, I'm now going to go off around the country next year, but in a rib that Ribcrest are going to sponsor, and Suzuki are going to put the engine on the back. Because what I want to do is, I went off around the country and I was on my own the whole time, and really, looking back at it now, I would have liked to have taken other people with me and given these patients, or the people like me, that experience, that hope, that goal as well, to be part of something quite big. And this is where this project was then born. So if on to the next one, please. What I want to do next year is take 270 patients or survivors and their siblings, because I think the sibling side of it is very important too, and visit all of the all-weather or Class 7 lifeboat stations around the country. So that's going to take me right the way up to Shetland and round Ireland. We're going to go into the Isle of Man, although there's not a Class 7 station there, then down to the Channel Islands, but breaking that up into 45 legs so I can take patients with me and give them and let them be part of all of this big challenge. And that's going to take me over about 4,000 miles next year. And we're going to do it on this big 9-metre rib, so I'm going to be able to take 6 people at a time. There's going to be 2 spare seats, one for me and a passenger at the front, and I'm going to live on the little boat in a capsule somewhere tucked up at the front, just to try and keep the costs down and everything like that. So it's going to be it's going to be fun, but it's also going to be giving something back and getting these people involved. What I'm going to do it for, I'm going to raise funds for the Teenage Cancer Trust this time, because across the country, well, that's how I met Hannah, Richard and David, and a whole load of other friends as well through TCT. And they build specific wards for 16 to 24-year-olds for this age group, because when I was ill, I was stuck in an adult ward, and that wasn't very pleasant because I was the youngest person there, and lots of people, they were a lot older than me and they were dying, and I didn't quite fancy watching them being carted out in bags all the time. But these guys do special wards for the age group, so it's really important, I think, and that's also an inspiration, a hope, because they can socialise with other people their own age and going through the same thing. So that's the charity I'm doing it for. On to the next one, and these are my current sponsors who are going to help with the next project. And I've taken, well, they're all from the past one, but it's RipQuest and Creator 5 are going to build this boat for me. We're actually building it now. We're going to launch it in May this year and do a lot of training with it this year and try and train up the people potentially that I'm going to take with me around the country. So huge thanks to these guys here, and hopefully more will come along soon. But on to the next one, please. This is how I'm going to fund it all. So if you guys know anyone at all who'd be interested in sponsoring a seat or sponsoring a leg, I'm going to try and get 45 companies to sponsor this, to sponsor a leg, and that's going to provide the fuel and all the running costs of this project for the next 2 years. Or you can sponsor a seat for a patient. So there's going to be 6 patients on each leg, and really this is, at the moment, this is the only way I can figure out how to afford and do all the logistics around it all, because my measly wage at the moment I'm working at Oyster, commissioning Oyster yachts, and the wage there is not really going to be funding any of this. So if you know anyone or can help in any way, or if you know anyone anywhere around the country who can help with logistics, even trying to get fuel onto the boat, because I'm just going to rock up into a marina with a couple of jerry cans, so it's going to be quite tricky to do all of this on my own. So if you know anyone at all, any way of helping, please get in touch with me. I'm going to be walking around the show today. I've got big cards to hand out, buckets, all that type of thing. But yeah, this is pretty much it really. This has been my life for the past couple of years, and my life for the next 2 years, I think, as well. But thanks a billion for listening.
Ladies and gentlemen, RYA.